Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Gaming Realms PLC full year results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses where it's appropriate to do so on the Investor Meet Company platform. Before we begin, I would just like to submit the following poll, and if you'd give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I would now like to hand you over to the executive management team from Gaming Realms PLC. Mark, good morning, sir.
Hi, well, thank you all for joining, and it's my pleasure to be able to run through who Gaming Realms is, what we do, and also our sort of great growth and performance over the last few years, and really the potential we have in the short and long term. So today, our exec management team, we have, who's not on the call today, is Michael Buckley, our executive chairman, a co-founder of Gaming Realms, also chairman of Cashcade, which was the owner of Foxy Bingo, which he founded, I think, in the late 99, early 2000. So he's been in the industry for a very long time. I was the finance director of that company and co-founder of Gaming Realms, and Jeff, who sat with me, is the CFO of Gaming Realms, and he's been with us since 2019. So between the three of us, we've been sort of running this company for a long time now. We have a very strong management team for what we do as well, who've all come from businesses which have been market leaders in what we do. So there's from our CTO and Chief Products Officer, who recently joined in October last year. We have Craig in the US, who is actually been working with Slingo for over 20 years now, and Gareth's come from Light and Wonder, and Pete, sorry, I should have mentioned, came from IGT previously, which is one of the leading land-based and online game studios in the world. So we are a developer and licensor of real money games into the regulated iGaming market, and we have a portfolio of circa 75 games now. And they're all based around, or majority of the revenue in the games are based around our Slingo IP. It's IP we acquired in 2015 from a company in the US. Slingo has been around for almost 30 years and has very great heritage in gaming market. So for example, I have Slingo here in Scratch. In the US, we have a deal with SG Lottery, where you can actually buy physical lottery scratch cards branded Slingo in over 40 states. We have brought Slingo to the real money iGaming world, developing games. I think the first one we released in 2015, and we've been bringing games into the market ever since. We also acquired a freemium social Slingo business, which is run out of our studio in Canada, and that continues to be an area where we can monetize our Slingo games in a slightly adjacent market to the iGaming. And on top of that, we've got a really great game distribution platform now, and we call this our RGS. All our games are hosted there. This is the platform which has been scaling quite rapidly since 2019 and has been integrated into either distribution partners or directly with operators around the world. Just a little bit of how we monetize. When we're building our Slingo games, we build essentially one game. We certify it in all the different markets that we're in. We translate, and then we try and license that worldwide to as many operators as we can. Our pricing is based on performance of the game. So the more successful our games, we earn a revenue share of that. We now have a big portfolio of games, so we're quite diversified in how we're receiving, revenue per game, and also over 180 partners, again, and in sort of 18 markets, has diversified where our revenues come from. We also license Slingo as a brand. That is a very valuable piece of IP. I've talked about the lottery scratch cards we have, but we've also licensed Slingo.com to a European casino operator. We have a license for a Slingo bingo product with Entain, one of the biggest European operators as well. And we'll look for more interesting opportunities in licensing in markets that we're not quite executing, slightly adjacent ones. And then we have our social casino business, which I talked about earlier, where this is very much a freemium model where we are people are paying for credits to play our games more, and we also earn money through ad revenue. Just thought to touch on a little bit about how Slingo stands out and how we're able to grow so rapidly within this market. There are thousands of slot games in the market across the world, but only one Slingo provider. And our games are a little bit different to a traditional slot game. They're multi-staking. They take longer to play as well. And we're able to incorporate really valuable IP even into our games we license in. So I think you can maybe I'll see on these graphics, you know, we've licensed Deal or No Deal, and we can build that into our Slingo format. And we've done it with video games like Space Invaders and Tetris last year. And we're also able to license really top land-based slot games and online slot games from some of the other studios, because Slingo attracts a slightly different audience and it helps the profile of that IP as well. But where it becomes really valuable is, and this is just a selection, I mean, there's many, many more operators who do this. I've just taken some operators in the UK, a state lottery in Canada, and then a recently launched operator in the US, and Fanatics. All of them have Slingo sections on their site. So that's how we're able to stand out with value, you know, have valuable real estate essentially on operator sites for players to come and play our games. Once they do, the majority of our players play more than 2 Slingo games, and they start to cross-sell through our portfolio. So this helps with the marketing through of our games. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but we work with the biggest brands in most of the markets, and there'll be big ones here you recognize, whether it's Bet365 or Sky Bet in the UK, and DraftKings and BetMGM in the US, and etc. We recently launched with BetClick in Portugal, and so we're working with the biggest operators who are pushing our games to the widest audience. And this is all translates into a slide I really love actually, and it sort of shows our progress every half year, going back to when we started our licensing business in 2017. The top 2 charts are cumulative, so we have, by the end of 2023, just over 180 operators we're live with and 75 games. The bottom 2 are per half, but as the more operators and games we're launching with, the more players playing our games, the more bets are placed on our games. So last year, can't quite add up, but there was over £5 billion was bet on our games across the world, which shows you how much scale has gone into our platform. You know, if you look back at 2018, 2019, it was much smaller. So we've been able to grow really and have capacity to grow as we've been growing the business and launching new partners. And because of the way the rev share works, bets equals revenue for operators, and then we earn a percentage of that. And we've been growing our revenue as well in line with that. And it's a really nice curve. We've announced that 2024, the first 2 months of the year, are 20% up on last year as well. So we're continuing this momentum into 24. And this is a slide where, again, I just thought I'd try and demonstrate what happens when we go live with cohorts of operators. The numbers here are actually the revenue the operators make up from our game. So in 2023, it was not far off £300 million revenue for the operators. And this shows the years we then go live with partners. So in 2020, for example, we went live with a set of operators and generated £34 million of revenue for them. And those same operators, in 2021, generated 59 million off our games. In 2022, 71 million off our games, growing to 80 million last year. And I think what I want to say here is when we go live with operators, we don't jump from, I don't know, nothing to 100 on day one and then slowly watch it reduce. We actually grow with our partners year on year. As we release more games with them, we get a closer relationship. As their players get more engaged with our games as well. So we're able to actually grow in two ways. One is new operators, which layer on top, but also with the existing operators. And that's what's seen our really great growth over the last few years. Just a few KPIs. Again, you should be able to see all this in our announcement of last week, but it's worth pointing out that, you know, we're growing at 36% compound growth rate for the last 4 years. We are only working with regulated partners. Our EBITDA before the share options is growing to over 10 million now. We're in 18 regulated markets. We still have a relatively small team of 86. Again, our players have grown a lot. So there were over 5 million unique players playing our Slingo games last year. We're still growing in our key markets. The US is our largest market and grew 22% last year. And then we picked Canada here because that's a new regulated market with Ontario, the province, but also we work with the state lottery in Quebec. That's grown over 200%. Again, it sort of shows that I think last year was the first full year that we were live in that regulated market, and there's still a lot more growth. Like I said, our content licensing has grown 20% this year versus same period of last year. So we've really got that momentum going forward. And just a snapshot of some of where we're going to hopefully move into this year. Again, I'm expecting that we can grow in the markets we're already in, but we've applied for a license to go live with the state lottery in British Columbia in the province of Canada. And we hope to replicate the success we've had with Lotto Quebec in Quebec and also the Ontario lottery in the regulated Ontario market. We're going to hopefully launch in the coming weeks in West Virginia, which will be the next regulated US state we'll launch into. We've had great success there. We already have contracts with the main operators and integration routes. It's not as large as the other markets we're in, but it's another one for us, and we expect to be profitable there. And then it's we'll wait to see the next states which open in the US. We've recently received a license to supply our games into Greece, and we're now going through the exercise of getting games and working out certified in which partners we can go live with there. And we're making, operational strides for places like Switzerland. We were accredited with the ISO 27001 last year, which is the highest security certificate you can get for your platform, which is a requirement of Switzerland. And we're working on some integrations there and scoping also South Africa for a regulated launch in that market as well. Okay, I'll just hand you over to Jeff, who'll run through a few of the slides for you.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm going to take you through some slides covering the growth in our content licensing business, and then move on to another slide at the end that just looks at some of our highlights from our financial results from 2023. So this first slide is looking at where the growth is coming from within the content licensing business. And the slide itself is a bridge between our 2022 revenues of 14.3 million that you can see on the left-hand side, up to the 18.6 million of revenue that we generated in 2023, and kind of the bridging steps going from one to the other. And I guess there's really two key messages that this chart is showing us. And the first one is that 3/4 of our overall growth in 2023 is actually coming from partners that we were live with before the start of the year. So if you look at the buckets on this slide called North America existing and EU existing, the 3 million of the overall 4 million growth is coming from those two areas. So, and that kind of demonstrates what Mark was talking through a few slides ago, where we go live with a cohort of operators in any given year and then really grow with them over the subsequent years. So that's a visualization of that sort of happening within the 2023 numbers. And then the second message really is just that our growth is coming fairly evenly between the North American markets and European markets. So it's great that we're seeing such substantial growth in both of those areas. So that's high level growth. If we move on to the next slide now and look at where this growth is coming from on an individual territory basis. So this slide is looking at 6 of our key markets and looking at the revenue in 2023 compared against 2022. There's also a 7th bucket called Rest of the World in the middle of the slide that you can see. So on the left-hand side, you can see that our 2 biggest markets continue to be the US and the UK, and both of those have grown at in excess of 20% year on year. And looking at some of these individually, so the US on the far left-hand side, that has grown, or revenue from this market has grown 22% in the year. So we've been able to get more content live, particularly in Michigan and Pennsylvania. That's really grown revenue from those states. Also, of the 44 new partners that we went live with globally in 2023, 15 of those were within the US market, so that's also helped to drive growth there. And as Mark just mentioned, looking ahead to 2024, we're about to go live, or we expect to go live very shortly, in our 5th US state of West Virginia. So we hope to see continued growth there. Then moving on to the right and the UK. So despite the UK being the most mature market that we're in, revenue actually grew 21% year on year. And we continue to go live with new operators in that market. And there were some notable ones in 2023, such as Bet365. And then again, moving to the right in Canada. So that's a market that continues to grow really nicely for us, 214% in 2023, although starting from a relatively low base. So we continue to launch new content in that market and go live with new partners. And again, as Mark mentioned, we have a pending application with the British Columbia Provincial Lottery. So tagging that onto those Canadian revenues in 2024 will be really nice. And I think Italy is the only other one I would highlight from this slide, growing at 159%. So given the size of the Italian market, which is around 60 or so % of the UK market, that's a market we expect to see continued good growth in as we continue to launch with new partners, launch more of our existing content, and importantly, start to tailor content specifically for that market, which we hope to do towards the end of this year. So I now want to move on to the next slide and look at some of the key sort of highlights from our 2023 results, which were released a week ago. And I guess before I flick onto the slide, it's just important to say that the numbers that you'll see are on a group-wide basis, whereas the last couple of slides I've been talking through have just been our core content licensing business. So on the left-hand side of this slide, you can see a summarized income statement comparing the 2023 results with the previous year. And some of the highlights I'd pull out would be overall group revenue increasing 26% to 23.4 million. And really that's been driven by our core content licensing business, which grew 30% in the year. Variable costs were 4.8 million, and they represented 21% of revenue, the same ratio as in the previous year. And we really continue to invest in our people and our teams to deliver the growth both in 2023 and beyond. And that really is the main reason behind admin expenses increasing 18%, which is a very similar increase in our headcount. And all of that results in adjusted EBITDA, which is one of the key metrics we use to sort of track and analyze our performance, growing 29% to 10.1 million. And then right at the bottom of the page, you can see profit before tax, and that increased 47% to 5.2 million. So I'll just pass back to Mark to look at some opportunities.
Okay, just looking at some of the opportunities that we have in the short term to long term. So here we're looking at the how we tend to look at our content licensing business and all as one, but the US, as Jeff said, is our largest market. But if we exclude the US, I don't want it to think it's hiding anything. We're still actually growing really strong outside the US. As Jeff said, we've been growing in the UK, Italy, and some of the other markets there, and we've got a lot more potential to come. So we've got a really good sort of cadence there of growth. And then moving on into the US, this is how we've been growing over the US. And here it's quite interesting to see as we're adding new states or markets in Canada, we're just layering on top now. And as more states open in this market, we expect to be able to continue our growth. We're very well set up for launching in new US states. We've been through the licensing process a number of times now. We have the integrations and the contracts already set up. There's actually quite a high barrier to entry into these markets. So what we have is we've sort of done the hard work on that now. I'm not saying it's easy to launch in every market, but we know what we're doing here. We have the documentation and certified tech as well. So this is a slide which is sort of showing a forecast of where the US market's going to go over the next from 24 through to 28, and there is good growth there. It's quite a prudent look in the sense that it's taking the markets which are live already and one or two others which are close to launching or passing legislation. So, for example, I think this has Maryland coming in the back end of 25 or beginning of 26, because that's been passing some state legislation for that, and there's maybe one or two others. So it's a very conservative look, but we can still see good growth over the coming years and potential for our games and gaming realms in this market. And that's it. I thought I would just leave you with one other slide, which sort of highlights Slingo and what we're able to do. We're producing, I think last year was 10 unique Slingo games, and this year we're aiming for 12. Last year we had some great brands in there, and mechanics with Tetris Partnership and Space Invaders, and also, we've licensed Cleopatra, very, very old, very strong slot IP from IGT. But also we've been doing a number of bespoke games for our partners, and I just thought I'd leave you with one case study we've done, which is really interesting, which is with BetMGM in Detroit in Michigan. So they have a license for the Detroit Red Wings hockey team, that sports franchise in the US, and we built a bespoke Slingo Red Wings game for them, and it's really nice. It gets good support in state, but because of the nature of the way Slingo plays, BetMGM have chosen this game for a huge promotion it's been running over the since October. I think this for the whole hockey season, so October 23 through to April this year, and essentially every time the Red Wings score 4 goals at home, I think everyone who logs in that day gets $5 free to play our Slingo game. So it's been getting huge play, but it's been converting and working very well for BetMGM, better than other content they could choose. And some of the benefits of this is, of course, we get more players playing Slingo and cross-selling through and wagering on our games. We're also getting great brand exposure. The graphic on the right there is that big screen they have hovering over a hockey rink, which is all branded Slingo Red Wings, which then gets picked up on TV, and it works its way through for the sports fans. So it's something that we've been doing quite a few of these for operators. It allows them to promote something bespoke. We did some big ones last year with Flutter Group as well in the UK, and I think we've done in Romania and lots of the markets we're in. So that's with them. So anyway, yeah. So it's something that we're also doing, and it's just another way of getting more players engaged with the games. So I just thought I'd leave you with that to end the formal side of the presentation here. And then I guess we can move on to, let's see, thank you very much. We've had some questions which have been submitted, which we can run through and try and answer. So the first one here is congratulations on another fantastic year. Can you please expand more on your plan to reinvest the profit into the business and what you expect to see in 2024 and beyond? So yes, so thank you for the feedback. Yeah, we've done a really good job of growing in the last year, growing in our current markets with our current operators. As Jeff said, we still have growth to come with 22 games live in Pennsylvania versus I think 70 odd in other markets, and still in the 30s in Michigan. As I've said in the presentation, we've got West Virginia to come and other new markets. We'll also be looking for new innovation in our product and our platform as well, which hopefully will increase players to play on our games. So I think it's a mixture of very much doing what we've been focused so much on growing our distribution, expanding, growing with our number of games, which again leads to the more players playing and bets made on our games, but also maybe adding a little bit more innovation to see if we can expand beyond the current set of Slingo players, and as well building features, I think, more into our platform or marketing tools. So we're definitely looking in those areas into 24 and to 25. One thing that we've not really touched on is covered in this question. So it's an exciting move to become a distributor, and it's great to see the success with For the Player. Could you provide any insight in how you see parts of the business grow? And is this where the future growth of the company lies? So there is definitely growth here. Slingo is a very it's got very special IP and it plays in a certain way. But of course, there are lots of, the slot market is huge in lots of these places. And so we're able to take really innovative studios to market and distribute, and it sort of is additional, accretive to what we're doing rather than competitive. So it works well for us and the studio itself. So yeah, we've been quite pleased with the progress. It's really what we've done is with For the Player as well. It's been a bit of a learning curve for us as we've been learning how to build the games onto our platform and take them to market. We have really good distribution in the US, and that's what's so appealing for lots of studios to work with us. I think we're going to be boutique. There's a lot of work there. We still have a lot of focus on what we're doing. We are going to go live with a second studio shortly. We have a couple of games built there, and we will build the business. I do think it's where growth can come, but it's not going to drive the growth itself. Just moving on. Sorry, here, just going through. Is there one you want to look at here, Jeff?
Yeah, we had a couple of questions actually on capitalization of development costs. So the first question is, you capitalize a lot of development costs. If you did not do this, you would barely be profitable. I note that you offset this to some extent in your 2.5 million amortization charge, but please explain this. Your capitalization figure has been significant and consistent for a long time. How much longer will it be before you just expense these costs against your P&L? So I guess this question is focusing on the licensing business with the 2.5 million amortization charge. So in 2023, we capitalized 3.8 million of development spend within the licensing business, and that's broadly broken down 2.7 million of spend on building and developing new games, and 1.1 million towards enhancing the platform and the distribution network. And I guess the whole point of capitalizing these sort of costs is that you sort of match when the cost of these is charged to the income statement through amortization against when you expect to get the benefit of the assets. So for us, that's when we generate the revenue from the games and use the platform to distribute and generate revenue. So it wouldn't be right to just expense all of those to the P&L in one go. And I guess an example of that would be the 2.7 million of spend in 2023 related to games. It takes between 9 to 12 months from sort of concept through to distribution and delivery of the game. So a lot of the costs, or a good chunk of those costs, are related to games which aren't even live yet. So again, it wouldn't make sense for those costs to be expensed in 2023, and then we'd almost have freebie revenues moving forwards. And then there was another one, if I can find it. Development costs going forward, are these expected to grow in line with revenue or remain around 5 million for the foreseeable future? So yeah, I think total group development costs were 4.6 million in 2023. I think as things currently stand, so with an annual roadmap of 12 games plus reskins for certain operators, we expect to see a slight increase on the 4.6 million in 2024, so around between 4.6 and 5 million, nothing overly in excess of that, unless there were to be specific projects that we were to allocate capital resource to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just moving on. This is a question in: what percentage of licensing revenues are contractually annually recurring, and what percentage are one-off in nature, please? i.e., what level of visibility is there about future licensing revenues? So I would say the one-off in 23 was around 3 to 3.5% of the 19.9 million in licensing. So almost all of it is recurring. So it goes back to the slide where I was talking about that compound rate. That is the majority of all the revenues, essentially. That it's all recurring, and we're seeing that growth through. Let me move on. I'm just trying to bunch them in a way together. Okay, here's one here. Yeah, because we recently announced a deal with Playtech. How long is the rollout expected to take? Will it be global or focused on regulated markets? What's the estimated revenue impact? So we don't necessarily forecast revenue impact at this point. We are close to finishing the integration. We've been working on it for a while, and before even the contract was signed. It is a regulated market play, so we will look at their essentially their partners in some of the regulated markets. A good example I'd say is in Switzerland, you have to be directly into the platform of the operators, and Playtech are the platform for some of the operators there. So it does open new markets and has certain operators there, and there'll be others in the UK as well, and in other markets we'll look to do. I know they're a platform provider for one of the operators in the US we can go to as well.
We've had a dreaded tax question. So a tax credit has boosted the bottom line. Will this recur in the coming years, or will you move to a more normal tax rate? So the tax credit, there's a few things going on within our tax line. So the tax is in a credit position because we have substantial tax losses within the UK that we can use to offset against our future profits. So as at the end of 2023, we had 28.4 million of such losses. So we're tax paying in the US, where we distribute our games into the US states. So that's where the current tax charge comes from, but we don't currently pay tax in the UK. And I guess accounting wise, because we've got these losses that we can use to offset against our profits in future years, we recognise the deferred tax asset of 1.8 million in 2023, and that credit drops through the tax charge line. So that's why that became a credit in total. I think the amount of tax losses that we recognise represented about 2 years of what we expect to use. So there is potential in subsequent years to increase the period over which we look. So that would result in that tax credit continuing to be in credit rather than a charge. But we just have to assess that each year end.
Cool. Actually, question here. Revenue from one of the earliest US markets, New Jersey, appears to have peaked in the second half of 22. Is there anything unusual about New Jersey? Well, I'd say a little bit. One is it's slightly more competitive market, but more importantly, we had a couple of platform migrations last year, which just sort of paused some of the game launches, but also with two of the larger partners, paused launches with them particularly, and also just we had to essentially republish the games through the apps with them, which just set us back. But we're back on track, and hopefully we'll see the return to the previous levels with that in 2024. And I think the other thing with the US is a lot of the operators now, in the past when New Jersey was the sole market, everything would be focused around launching in New Jersey, whereas a lot of operators want to launch multiple states at once, and certifications take different lengths of time to be done, Pennsylvania and Michigan being slower than New Jersey. So we just had to wait for more certifications for games to come in before we're launching. But again, we're sort of much more on top of that now. I just needed a period of pause to get on top of that. So that's why hopefully we'll start to see a trend upwards again there.
There's another question on slide 10. The number of bets, is each bet a game session? So the 5 billion sessions were played, or if there was 2 bets following the initial 10 spins, would that count as 3 bets? So that slide was, let me just take you to the slide. Come back. So this number of bets in the bottom left-hand corner, that's actually looking at a pound sort of total value of total bets. So in 2023, the total bets going through the platform was 5.5 billion pounds. So it's not talking about quantity of bets here. So that increased from 4.7 billion pounds worth of bets being placed through the platform in 2022.
Don't know, something's happening with the probably one thing to do here, and it may be a mixture of many questions just around the cash balance we're building. And we have a few sort of options with this. One is share buyback. Another potential is dividend. I suppose there's 2 others which involve investment. One is we have such a great distribution network. Can we essentially make more use of that by taking a more innovative product to market and increase revenues and profit and future cash generation, or potentially acquire a portfolio of games? We are looking at all of this. We are conscious that it is building, and we're looking at the options of the best sort of investment back for the shareholders and more importantly, the future growth of the business. There was one more to look at here. It was just around our announcements, I think.
I think there was one other one on capitalization that I can just cover quickly. So given the steadily increasing amount of development spend capitalized, why don't you bite the bullet and just write this off each year? Wouldn't that leave you with a cleaner set of accounts? So I think I've kind of already answered this one with the previous talk around capitalization and why that's not right to do so, because we want to match when the cost is incurred with when we get the benefit of generating the revenue. And I guess also under IFRS, so accounting standards, if the development costs meet certain criteria, then it's not an option to do that. It is a mandatory, you have to capitalize and amortize over a set period. So I guess also just to be clear, so we amortize our game development spend over 5 years, and our platform over 3 years. And again, we feel that's completely appropriate. We're still generating revenue today in 2024 from games that we built back in 2017, 2018, 2019, and decent revenues at that. So I think that sort of shows why we feel that's appropriate.
Yeah. Just maybe a final one here, as we're coming to the end of the session, is I just thought it was a bit more about market announcements. So why do we have to hear about new deals via LinkedIn instead of using RNS, which would be more widely read and in turn generate more interest? So I mean, we've been over this quite a lot internally and also with advice we've had, but really want to keep the RNS. We want to use that for material events, those maybe outside our forecasts, or whether they're more strategic deals or material to our financial performance. And I think they then have the impact and the desired impact from that. We went live with 44 operators last year and launched a number of games and bespoke operator games, and it probably would be very noisy if each one of those went on RNS. There probably is a way we can bunch them up better. For example, we do list quite a lot in our prelims announcement of last week, but maybe there's another way we can sort of get that news out in more ways than just LinkedIn, so there's a bit more visibility on what we're doing. I think that's probably going to be it, unfortunately, for the questions for this session.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Mark, Jeff, thank you very much for your presentation and for answering all of those questions for investors. And of course, if there are any further questions that do come through, we'll give you these back immediately after the presentation has ended, just for you to review, to then add any additional responses, of course, where it's appropriate to do so. And we'll publish all those responses out on the platform. But Mark, perhaps before really just looking to redirect those on the call to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, if I could please just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, that would be great.
Yeah, just really like to thank all of your time today, and also, I guess, reading through our announcement and the questions you put forward. Really appreciate it. We're really looking forward to another year of strong growth, and hopefully we're looking forward to updating you all soon on our progress, on our expectations for the year. But thank you very much.
Mark, Jeff, that's great. And thank you once again for updating investors this morning. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Gaming Realms PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good morning to you all.